Welcome to the Why Not Real Estate Podcast, where you will learn top strategies from world-class real estate investors, both large and small. Why not? Tune in and get started today.
The same concepts that you will use to buy a $1 million deal, you're going to use to do a $10 million deal, and you'll use to do a $100 million deal. The concepts of a capital stack don't change vastly. It's the amounts that you're going after. So it's really a matter of think bigger about the deal, because the fundamentals of what you're going to be doing will change. And I thought about that, and I really sat with that for a while. And I when thinking about that, kind of began to challenge myself and say, like, I'm doing myself a disservice by not thinking bigger about what I could be going after.
Hey, what's up, all of my real estate peeps? This is Brian Lucier with another episode of the Why Not Real Estate Podcast, where we interview seasoned real estate investors, both large and small, in the real estate world, where we believe multifamily is the number one asset class buy and hold. So today, ladies and gentlemen, on our show today, we have a guest who's an active real estate investor and broker. I met this gentleman about a month or so ago at the Denver, Colorado Better Life Real Estate Investors Summit, where I would definitely consider him to be a people person. Very engaging, easy to talk to, very nice gentleman. He loves meeting new people and helping them to achieve their financial real estate goals. Since 2016, he has been transforming lives, including his own, through real estate investment. Starting as an investor in Milwaukee, Wisconsin market, he has grown expertise and expanded into the booming Chicago, Illinois market. With a focus on multifamily properties, our guest leverages real estate as a powerful tool for building financial stability and security. As the founder of NOMO Capital LLC, he manages a thriving $4 million real estate portfolio that continues to grow every year. Our guest also is an investor-friendly realtor broker. If you're buying real estate property, you know that you need an investor-friendly realtor and broker. And he understands buy and hold rental real estate. So whether you are a first-time home buyer or a seasoned real estate investor, he will help you to find the best property to meet your housing goals. And if you're an investor, your real estate investor buy box. Some of his service specialties is he's a buyer's agent. He will represent you as a listing agent. He's a relocation concierge, which will help you get from point A to point B. As I mentioned, he is an investor-friendly realtor, so he gets you as a real estate investor. He understands property management operations. He is a landlord, real estate entrepreneur. He is also a licensed realtor based in Chicago, still actively investing in both the Chicago and Milwaukee markets, where he provides strategic thinking, marketing, negotiation, and transaction management services for his clients. We are so happy to have his insights on the podcast today. I want to thank you all for tuning in to learn his actionable strategies for achieving success in the exciting world of real estate investing. Ladies and gentlemen, all of my real estate peeps, it is my pleasure to have on our show today realtor, broker, landlord, real estate entrepreneur, and the founder of NOMO Capital LLC, Mr. Josh Ransone. Josh, welcome to the show.
Brian, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for the amazing introduction. Honestly, I feel like I need to hire you to just introduce me whenever I have any speaking engagements. That was amazing. That was truly amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
I am thrilled to have you here. I met so many wonderful people in Denver, you being one of them for sure. And I apologize because now you're going to be in our marketing machine and you're going to be getting all the meat that we've been processing. So I really want to thank you for reaching out and just being such a nice person to talk to.
Absolutely.
Immediately wanted to have you on the show. So I want to thank you for coming out and meeting with us today. And I always get the same comment after I do the intro, and I always have to put the mirror right back on my guest. I mean, I'm just reading what you've done. So all of this sounds wonderful, but it's all you, Joshua. You're the one who's created this story, and this show will be your story. So I'm excited to get rolling. And if it's okay with you, let's go.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for being on the show. I'd like you, if you could, tell us a little bit about your background and what you used to do before becoming a real estate investor.
Sure, sure, sure. So, I was born in Chicago, and this is going to be kind of like a coming of age story. So, I was born in Chicago, grew up in Northwest Indiana. I come from a house of doctors. So, my dad's a doctor, my sister's a doctor. I'm not good with blood, so I actually went the business route and kind of started my career via that particular trail. Um, I started my career back in 2015. Out of school, I started in banking, which banking is a great industry if you're looking to learn about business, which is exactly what I was trying to do. Banking is great in the sense of it allows you to understand just, one, how money works, which I think is really important when you think about real estate, but also how and the importance of having a relationship with a bank with any business, whether like regardless of the industry. So it was just a really good kind of introduction into just the world of business, as well as just the importance of having those types of relationships. But that's kind of like my background. My original trade, I guess you could say, was in banking. Started in Milwaukee, moved to Chicago, kept it going. And that was a really great way of kind of giving me some foundational knowledge of just the loan lending side of things, as well as just understanding the way money moves and how it really can impact businesses when it comes to their growth trajectory and achieving their goals.
So here you are, family of doctors, got into the banking industry. That was your career. So what was that light bulb moment that switched from, okay, now I'm in banking, but there's something going on here with real estate? What was that event? What was that transition?
So we're gonna talk about books a little bit later, but I read a fair amount of books as I was getting ready to graduate from college. I always liked equity markets, and I was always invested in the stock market. But it wasn't until I came across the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I feel like is the real estate investor's handbook when it comes to what kind of piques interest when first getting into the industry. Read the Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and that book truly created um, a lot of interest and curiosity around real estate. So I liked the fact that it was a tangible asset, which is talked about in the book. I like the fact that it generates cash flow on a monthly basis. It's not passive in the sense of, you can just set it and forget it, but it's passive in the sense of if you do set it up correctly, you can mitigate against how much, active work you need to do when it comes to managing a property. And that's kind of what really set my eyes on that. In addition to the concepts around making your money work for you, you get your first job, you're excited to have your first job and you're working hard. But I think I always had a little bit of, longing in the back of my head of, I don't necessarily know if this is for me per se, this 9 to 5 for the rest of my life type of deal. I don't know if this is gonna, be fulfilling for me, if this is gonna make me happy, if this is, what all I'm meant to do. So real estate was also something that I looked at as a way to establish and provide myself with additional options where I wasn't necessarily stuck or forced to stay within like the confines of like a 9 to 5 type of job situation.
So we've got the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. It had that paradigm shift to think of assets. And I think that's like one of the biggest things of that book. It makes you, for the first time, see assets and liabilities,
Absolutely.
right? So they always say your house is your biggest asset. Well, that's a banker talking.
Right.
An asset puts the cash flow into your pocket, liability takes it out of your pocket. So for the bank, your mortgage is an asset because you're paying them every month. So of course they're going to
Absolutely.
be an asset.
From
So
their perspective, you're exactly right on that. And I think, one of the I think most famous quotes out of that book is rich people acquire assets, poor and middle class people acquire liabilities and believe that they're assets. And I think just that distinction between, does this provide cash flow? Does this provide value? Does this provide benefit? Versus, does this cost you? Like, does this ultimately cost you? And when you kind of get that perspective, that really does do I believe a large amount of benefit to anybody. If they can see the world from that particular lens, I feel like a lot of decisions change, and a lot of focuses become clearer, and the way to pursue wealth, or the way to pursue financial freedom, becomes that much more attainable and guided once you kind of see things from that particular lens.
so here you are in the banking industry. Were you writing loans for mortgages, or what was your capacity at the bank? What were you doing there?
Yep. So I was in commercial banking. So basically, as opposed to it being an individual based type of relationship, largely working with businesses. So the middle market space consists of businesses ranging in a top line revenue of about 50 million to 2 billion. And that was my sweet spot. I was working with businesses in that particular revenue range, and that could come from, or that could consist of, if you have somebody that's looking to acquire a business or be sold, you have the investment banking side of the house. If they're looking to just do like a letter of credit, or sorry, line of credit or term loan, that's a piece of it. Cash management's another piece of it, all the way as complicated to debt capital markets, depending on the size of the business and kind of like their structure, if it's public or a private side company, or if they needed, wealth management for the family. So if the family had, wealth management needs or something like that, that's another aspect that you could assist them with, so to speak.
So, okay, so as commercial for businesses, you got the Kiyosaki spark, that flame. You've got the background understanding business finance. So I think I'm still missing that piece of the puzzle. What was that crossover? Or were there any other influences in your life growing up that inspired you to think real estate might be something I could do?
So I mean, I talked about Robert Kiyosaki, but I would say another really important or influential individual that I had in my life was my grandfather. My maternal grandfather was, as a black man in Detroit, he was a super big entrepreneur. So he had his own construction business, but also, and I think like what was really resonating with me as it pertained to kind of my influence, he was the first landlord that I knew.
Oh,
So he owned several properties in Detroit. And I mean, besides that aspect of it, him being an entrepreneur, him being uh, the individual that he was and how successful he was given the times, that was just something super inspiring to me, because it really did provide me with a lot of, you know, encouragement of pursuing things that might not necessarily be, the so to speak, like uh walked along path. I think the entrepreneurship path is one that not everybody does, not everybody can do, but if you do get that type of inspiration, that type of encouragement, you feel like you can take on the world. And I definitely would say my grandfather was a huge impact and influence to me in terms of kind of pursuing that piece.
so I got to ask, I can only imagine um, like a typical Saturday afternoon. I mean, you said your grandfather, what was your grandfather's name?
His name is John McConico.
Okay. James?
John.
John. John McConnell. So typical afternoon. Did John actually like go to the work sites? Did he bring you along? Were you ever like on any of his
Yeah.
work?
Oh, absolutely. And also when we would go to the his like where his construction business was, so he had like a lot of land, and it was like like we called it as kids because we were young. We called it like the junkyard, because it was just like all the all the equipment, it was all the like heavy duty machinery, all this stuff. and then he had his like office and everything. But we remember the junkyard because it just had, you know, all of this stuff. But also, he had two dogs that were all like they were dogs that were at the facility, and we would call them the junkyard dogs. They were super nice dogs, but it was just like, you know, we would go there a fair amount during the summer. We used to spend a lot of time in Detroit for summers growing up, and the junkyard was definitely a favorite place for us to visit.
So for me, that sounds magical. I mean, I think at 13 years old, I started carrying plywood for my dad. You know, he says, take these up. And I said, okay. And, you know, I was just happy to be on site. But, you know, what would like a typical, if you went there on a Saturday afternoon or whatever, what would typically be a day on Grandpa's junkyard?
A typical day would be, you know, he would bring us into the office. We would sit there while he was kind of working on some paperwork. And again, we were young, so the big thing was just keeping us out of trouble because there was so much to get into while we were there. But we would, you know, watch him take phone calls. We would watch him prepare paperwork, talk to his different workers when it comes to like just different projects they had working on because they were working all over the city. As well as, you know, playing with the junkyard dog, seeing some of the equipment, seeing some, and it was, you know, he was very much so on the commercial side of construction and development, and that was also very cool to see because I mean, you know, I just feel like there's so much unconscious learning that happens when you're exposed to things as a child, and there were just certain things that you know still stick with me of just remembering them being on his job sites, being at his offices, that, you know, I can remember things, and when I see them again, it just kind of, you know, connects a memory of this was like this is when I saw this the first time. This is kind of the first fond memory I have of this particular type of event or activity or looking at this type of equipment. Like this was, I mean, I feel like a lot of the experience or a lot of the memories that I have when it comes to like, you know, commercial construction or something like that stem from spending some of the summers at that junkyard.
That's the magic, right? Having those memories.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
I'm so glad I dug a little bit deeper. That was so good. So now we have a good foundation, right? So are you still um employed at the bank?
I'm juggling both, and I think it's interesting because I'm at the point where, you know, my wife and I have been talking about, you know, does it make sense to make the jump? And I think really what we're doing right now is actually weighing that particular option. And I wanted to talk about this, and I'm glad you brought this up.
Sure.
Um, you know, and I know this is getting ahead in terms of like the why of real estate, in terms of like why to do it, but it provides options. That was one of the greatest aspects to it when it, like when you think about it in terms of as an investment, you know, your exit. Real estate can provide you with several different exits, which I think make it a super safe type of investment. Whether your strategy is, you know, you're trying to do a flip. Say the market is doing what the market is doing right now. It's not necessarily the best time when you think of selling a home. There's high interest rates, super expensive for buyers to enter the market. Properties might sit a little bit longer than they might normally, like, you know, in comparison to say 2020, 2021, when it was kind of interest rates at an all-time low and it was a feeding frenzy. Anything that hit the market was going in a matter of like seconds, it felt like.
Yeah.
I feel like in certain situations though with real estate, allowing yourself to have the option of I'm doing a flip, I can't move the property as easily because the market's not as strong. I can pivot my strategy into a burr. I can refinance it, take my cash out, settle my debts, hold on to it, still have the asset, generate some cash flow so it pays for itself, and then reevaluate once the market turns again. Simultaneously, it, from a personal side, if you are in a situation of I'm in a 9 to 5, I'm in a situation where, you know, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, or I'm just not in love with my career, I'm not in love with, you know, the feeling of, you know, being trapped, so to speak, in this corporate America ladder situation, rat race situation. Real estate and establishing a real estate portfolio, establishing real estate investments can allow you to afford yourself options to then decide, okay, maybe I can make a career switch. Maybe I could come out and do real estate full time. Maybe I can, reevaluate how I'm approaching this 9 to 5 job without feeling the pressure of, if I make this change, I can't continue to pay for or afford the life that I currently have. It's a very much so, and why I love it so much is because of the fact that in both the strategy side of the house, but also on the personal side of the house, it affords you a lot of options. Brian, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I want to add to that as well, because you are still employable, that means you're loanable, you're lendable. You're going to be able to go in and get a better term on an investment property than someone who's totally left corporate America and is only looking at their financials based off of their portfolio. So you've got the double-edged sword. You've got the portfolio income and you've still got your W-2 income. So, and I say this to people all the time. I mean, they want to get into real estate, they want to jump and all that. And this is not so fast. Stay at your full-time job as long as you can to hit that critical mass. I mean, a couple of shows ago, we had Andrew Freed on there, and at the time, I
Mhm.
think he was just rounding the corner on 100 units, and now it is 2, 3, 4 months later, he has upped his portfolio to over $20 million within like 6 months, and he still keeps his daytime job because he knows that he can have his portfolio income and he can have his W-2 income. And because of that, he's able to leverage and grow his portfolio even faster and more stable.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I would not be quick to punch out on that clock just yet, because it does afford you possibilities and opportunities that those of us lone rangers who've left the farm so long ago, there's no going back for me. I don't think I'll ever have a job again for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that. So good and good and good. So we got you all the way up to walking the long path, and here you are on real estate, and you're still investing.
I
And
am.
and you've got another iron in the fire, that you're a realtor and a broker, and you understand the multifamily space. So
Absolutely.
you're not just looking at a house to buy, you're analyzing it as a business. You're buying a property.
Absolutely.
And this is the thing a lot of landlords don't necessarily catch. You may be buying a single family house, a duplex, a tri, a quad, a six, a 10, a 12, whatever it is. You're not just buying a property, you're buying a business. Let that sink in for just,
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
everything that comes with it, you're going to have your operations and everything that comes with it. And I'm not going to run down that rabbit hole right now, but I think you're smart enough. You've got a portfolio income, you've got W-2 income, you've got your realtor and broker license. So you're covering all the bases here. Very smart.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I started as an investor. So my first entrance into real estate was a house hack. So it was a 3 unit in Milwaukee. I still own it to this day, and I still get calls about it from people asking me to purchase it. But that was kind of my intro into it, and I always, from that point, had the bug. It was always a situation around, okay, I'm looking for the next deal. I'm looking for the next thing to buy. But you're exactly right when you're looking at it, and the way that you should look at it as that business. You're buying an asset, you're buying something that is going to generate cash flow, but you do need to look at it very, very, very clearly as it being a business. There's going to be expenses. Those expenses are probably going to change. They're going to be variable. They're not necessarily going to always stay the same. You need to be aware of that and thinking about that and planning for that. Same thing with your adjustments to how much money the property is going to be making. You need to be, strategizing on different ways that the property could be making money, as well as, do you have a strategy in place for how you're going to raise rents year over year? Because I mean, if you have someone in there and everybody wants to be everybody's friend with a situation, but you have to remember you are running a business, and that is going to impact the building's profitability. It's going to impact your ability to pay for the expenses. If you're not generating the income necessary to sustain the asset, it'll then become a money pit. It'll become an expense or a liability, which is, circling back to the beginning of our interview here. We want to buy assets, and we want to refrain from purchasing liabilities thinking that they're assets. We want to make sure that we are constantly looking at it as a business, and that's the way in which you need to conduct yourself when you're interacting with tenants, the same way that you need to conduct yourself when you're dealing with lenders, and really anybody that has to do with the property. So you have a property manager, anything of that nature, you want to make sure that you're approaching it with that same business savvy and acumen that you're going to be approaching any situation of that like. That's going to set you up for success, as well as it'll be more work up front, but you're going to thank yourself later for it because of the fact that you put in the work when you needed to.
So here we are, right? We've been focusing on the beginning of the journey. So let's, I want to peel back a little bit of where you are right now.
Sure.
You're managing a $4 million portfolio. What does that look like? What type of assets are these? Duplexes, singles, tris, quads? And I hate to ask how many doors, because that's not really a measure of wealth, but I'm going to
Sure.
ask. So your $4 million portfolio, how many doors and what types of assets are these today?
Sure. So to answer the first question, 22 doors. The asset mix they're all within 2 to 4 units. So on the smaller multifamily side, 2 to 4 units. There's going to be, I would say right now, it's almost an even split between Milwaukee properties and Chicago properties. Like I said, first one that I ever purchased was in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area, and then 2020 hit, and we were buying a lot in Chicago during that time as well. And I think that was a really good contrast to the two, because they're very different markets, very much so, with their own pros and cons. Chicago gets a lot of flack, but I feel like a good deal can be found anywhere if you know where to look for it.
Yeah, absolutely. They say all real estate investing is local. So you got,
Absolutely.
and this street compared to that street could be totally different. So
Absolutely.
you can't just say, okay, this fishbowl has all these type of properties. No, it's street by street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood by neighborhood. And
It's funny you bring that up. We the street by street thing. Uh uh in terms of sound investment advice, and I don't even know if this was intentional, but my parents, a long time ago, when we were, I think this was like when we were talking about purchasing a personal residence, they said, you really just want to find a good block. And that advice, whether they, meant for that to be an investment type of advice, or just like general, like you're going to look for like a house that you like or something like that, that advice is amazing, because when you are evaluating a property, evaluating a neighborhood, evaluating, your next uh, opportunity, that find a good street, find a good block, you know, filter will it'll lend you and lead you to some pretty solid opportunities. Because if you find a block where, you have neighbors that are present, that are taking care of their properties, and you can find an opportunity on that street, you'll have additional parties helping your investment succeed. You don't want to be the nicest house on the block. You don't want to buy a property where everything else around you is in shambles. You want to be, honestly, if you could be the worst property on on a very nice block, that's honestly where you want to be, because your value is probably going up compared to everybody else's. And that advice of find a nice block was definitely something that I've to this day kept incorporating when it comes to different properties I'm looking at and evaluating.
yeah, you are so spot on there. And I talked to, I don't know how many landlords, but they say, oh, this is a smoking deal because the numbers work. And I said, well, wait, slow down a little bit. Come back from the reins. What's the neighborhood, right? It may be
Right.
I mean, you can fix up the property. You can fix the problems in the property, but you can't change the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. We should unpack that for a little bit, because you can get yourself in trouble fixing a problem, but then the market not actually being there for your exit. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you doing a flip, the numbers look great, but then you get to the point in which you're trying to sell and the buyers don't want to live on this street or don't want to live in this particular neighborhood that will command the higher dollar amount. I
Yeah.
mean, then what's your strategy? I mean, like I said, you can pivot. Real estate allows you to switch around and, be nimble on your feet. However, if you didn't have any intention or desire to landlord it or hold on to it for longer, you can find yourself into some trouble at that point.
Guilty. Guilty is charged. I mean, we were starting out, we were looking for deals, and that whole thing on the block, right? We were in that fishbowl of the market where we were buying. So, well, how can we go wrong? Everything in this fishbowl is working. And we saw a 3-family. I think it came on for 215, which we thought was a smoking deal until after we closed on it and then drove by at night, and all we could smell was herbal cologne. We were not going to attract the tenant base that we actually wanted. So I think
Right.
we were marking the days on the calendar to get to 1 year so we could sell it at the lower capital gains, just to okay, we learned this was an experience. And I think that when we actually did finally evict the people on the left side of it who hadn't paid rent since we bought it, they left with all the appliances. Yeah, I guess they needed them more than we did, right? So we fixed it up
Oh man.
and buffed it. If we broke even, I was happy to just get away from that property because that's street, right? And yeah, we've got blogs on how you can do some due diligence and stuff like that. But I'll just real quick story here. We were looking at a property once, I think it was in North Carolina, and I was cute about it. I called up the fire department. I said, hey, the deal looked good, right? There's a red flag. The deal looked good, too good to be true. So I called up the police department down there, and you want to kind of do a little reconnaissance. So I said, hey, we're looking at moving into that area, and I'm going to be moving there with my 2 boys. Can you tell me about this apartment complex? And when I said the address, is oh yeah, we know that place. What do you got? He says,
Oh
well,
no.
a couple of months ago, when the fire chief's Ford Explorer was stolen, that's where we found it. And then,
Oh no.
and then I says, oh no, tell me more, right? Those open-ended questions. So it turns out that there had been calls there 340 calls to that property within the last year. So tongue in cheek, I said, what happened? Did they get 2 weeks off for good behavior? So we didn't buy that property. But
hey, to your credit.
well, yeah, I mean, could we have turned it around? Maybe, because it was a complex, security lights. There's so many things you might be able to do, but if it's in the middle of a war zone, just save your gunpowder for a better fight.
Yeah,
So
and I think there's definitely something to be said around that. And I mean, like, having the in the same sense of, real estate takes courage to kind of make the leap to jump in and do it, but also have the courage to say no. If it's a deal that's not going to work for you, if it's a deal that you're not comfortable with, or, if you're going to house hack, for example, because I mean, that's like a big way that a lot of people get started is that first one, a 2 to 4 unit, they live in or plan to live in one of the units, burn out the other 2 to 3 available units. You should obviously be comfortable with where you're going to be living for that year, where you're going to be living for that, like, minimum required year for that type of loan. But yeah, no, like, obviously you're going to have to make some sacrifices and some concessions to like what you're going to get with that first one. That first one's really the foundation. But obviously if the numbers don't work, it's in an area that, you're going to really have a tough time dealing with, like renting it, or if you're trying to sell it, or if you're trying to do, anything, the margins are really slim. It barely breaks even if everything goes correct in terms of your budget for your renovation or what have you. It's okay to say no sometimes as well. Like, and being conscious and thoughtful enough around the types of investments you're making to say like, this probably doesn't fit exactly what we're looking for. Or this doesn't fit what we're looking for enough to justify putting in or trying to, make this work.
Yeah, all really, really good stuff. I'm gonna push to the next question here. You had some really good segue points as we were talking about this. So I did a little bit of the math, and you've been investing 8-ish, 7, 8, 9 years.
So about 7, it's about 7. Yeah.
Okay, so here you are, 20 doors later. Don't know how many properties that is, but you've got some experience under your belt. You've had a few closings. Here's my time machine question for you. There's 2 prongs. If you could go back in time and give yourself advice getting started over again, what would that advice be? And the second part of the question, if there's a newbie watching this for the first time thinking, maybe this real estate thing might be something, what advice would you give to a newbie starting out today? So we'll take you first and then jump to the
Sure. So to start with me, it would be start sooner and think bigger. That's the advice I would give myself back when I was getting started or researching, educating myself, looking to get involved in it. Start sooner and think bigger would be that's advice honestly, and anybody that's looking to do it should should think of as well. The starting sooner is always kind of relative because it's whenever you get started is as soon as you can start. For someone looking to get started, the best advice that I would give them would be to set a date for yourself and tell people about it. So I feel like a lot of times when people are getting started, it's very easy to catch yourself in a situation that we all know called analysis paralysis, where you're just looking to analyze every little thing about the opportunity, the property, the neighborhood, the ins and outs, which it's important to do your due diligence, but there is a point in time in which you do need to pull the trigger. And the setting a time, date, and telling people is going to not only keep yourself accountable, but it's also going to keep yourself on track, because a lot of times people like to talk about doing stuff and then, they'll say, I'm going to do this year. And this year turns into next year, or turns into the year after that, turns into the year after that. The setting the date for yourself is more important because it's going to hold yourself accountable to do the little things to get you to the big goal. So if buying a property, buying your first rental property is your goal, set a date for, let's say, November. Honestly, it doesn't take that long. Set a date for August. Let's give yourself a couple months. Set a date for August. And then between that date, write all of the small steps that go into buying that first property. So you're going to need to get yourself pre-approved. So you're going to need to reach out to lenders and find out what your buying power is. Get yourself pre-approved, understand what the rates are that you can get, all that. That could be a step. You're going to need to start a search, an MLS search. Start working with a realtor so that you can start seeing properties and looking at them and evaluating those properties. That could be step 2. You're going to need to analyze a lot of deals. So when you start getting those properties into your email inbox, you need to set a goal of, I'm going to analyze every single property that comes in that fits within my buy box to see if that's an opportunity. And then set additional goals, smaller time frames of, this is when I want to have this done, because you'll look up and you'll have accomplished so many small goals that the actual big goal will be right in front of you. And you'll be like, oh, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And 2, you want to hold yourself accountable, tell people about it. Like, tell people about, hey, I'm looking at doing this, because in so many ways, people will hold you accountable, even if it's unintentional, where they'll ask, oh, hey, last time we talked, you were saying you were doing this. How's that going? And I mean, that's a bad feeling when you're being reminded of, goals or things that you just kind of like, oh man, I haven't done anything for that since the last time I talked to this person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that it's a little bit scary to put it out there in the universe and say, I'm going to do XYZ. I love that you were able to pick it apart, like, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time.
Exactly. Exactly.
For someone who's never done the process, you walk up to a property, a 3-decker for the first time, and say, oh my God, this thing's huge. I can't pull this thing down. But if you break it down into those steps, those little, okay, I need to do this, and here's how I do that. I need to do this, and here's how I do that. I think
Absolutely.
it, and I probably had this conversation with 20 different people in Denver. Did we do the whole mind map, spinning out the spokes when we?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
so there it is, right? I've got a presentation I'm going to be doing in July in New Hampshire. They're going to get me off the island to go talk to real people, so I'm kind of excited about that. And I'm just going to unpack the whole mind map, because I don't care if you're doing a bakery, a construction business, a flower shop. I don't care. It's the same process to figure out what are you supposed to be doing and what the other things are. And
Absolutely.
same process sits here if you're looking at that first purchase, getting yourself pre-approved, getting your financial ducks in a row, just getting all those boxes checked off. And if you're not sure, go to a bank, say, hey, here's what I put together so far. I don't have a deal yet.
Absolutely.
What am I missing? You know, and a nice gentleman like you sitting at the desk across will say that's close, but we still need XYZ. And that's okay.
Absolutely. But that's, yeah, you're exactly right. And you're not going to know that stuff until you start. The steps are just to get you to start. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, and you're going to learn it. And it's, to be perfectly honest, like I feel like sometimes things can seem a lot more complicated than they actually are.
Yeah.
And when you start the process, you learn how simple or less complex things actually are when you go through it. So I mean, by the point of time of you're pre-approved, you have your search set up, you're analyzing deals. It doesn't take that much to, find the right deal, submit an offer. And then when you submit an offer, you got, 30, 45 days and you're closed. And like, you're not really doing too much apart from, you got your inspection period, you got your earnest money that you got to send out wherever that's got to go. You got your appraisal, which you don't have to be there for that. And then you have your closing date. And that stuff is very much so regimented in terms of how it actually works out. This is residential we're talking about. I know there's more steps with commercial properties, but like for the first person buying their first residential multifamily property, 2 to 4 units, something of that fact, I'd say the longest stretch of this is going to be you getting your pre-approval stuff, the realtor you want to work with, defining your niche and your buy box. That's probably going to take the longest piece, because once you have that, the rest of the stuff will fall into place, because you're going to know what you're looking for. You're really just waiting for the opportunity, analyzing the deals, being consistent about that. So as the deals come in every single day, consistently look at them and analyze them, so you'll know exactly, this is the deal, this is the opportunity that fits within what I'm looking for. But the rest of it, it's not complicated. It's not rocket science. And it's very much so something that you will figure out as you're doing it.
Right. I mean, launching that first rocket is always the toughest one, right?
Absolutely.
It's funny. One of the first guests on the show was actually a rocket scientist.
Oh, really?
Props
What
out.
was his verdict? Did he think it was rocket science, that first one?
He's an engineer, very, very smart guy, looked at the whole real estate from a totally different angle. I mean, his upbringing growing up, family didn't even have furniture in the house because they put every penny they had into paying off the mortgage for the investment. That's how he was brought up. And then when he went to his friend's house and saw that they had furniture, it was like,
what is this?
It's like you being exposed to your grandfather at an early age. For you, that was normal, right? What you saw was normal. What he saw was normal, and ended up being a rocket scientist, right? So
normal is relative. Exactly right.
Normal is relative. I got to give you props on your wisdom, because for years and years, now decades, oh my God, I've always seeked out real estate professionals and landlords and investors who've been doing this a long, long time. And I've always asked them, what's the one thing you would have done differently? And they gave you they gave me your first answer. They would have started sooner. Obvious, right? And then I would
Yeah.
always think I would be clever and say, well, what's the second thing that you would have done if you were starting over? And you nailed it. Think bigger. These seasoned investors that I've talked to 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the game said they would have gone bigger faster. So here you are in under a decade, you've already figured this out. So my hat's off to you for the wisdom that you already know the answer that these seasoned guys, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, in retrospect, would have given themselves that advice. So
Yeah, I had the opportunity. There's a very successful real estate developer that I follow by the name of Don Peebles. I got an opportunity to hear him speak. This was, I think, 2 years ago, and he's a billionaire real estate developer, but he gave some just very good advice on that topic, and it was the same concepts that you will use to buy $1 million deal, you're going to use to do a $10 million deal, and you'll use to do $100 million deal. The concepts of a capital stack don't change vastly. It's the amounts that you're going after. So it's really a matter of think bigger about the deal, because the fundamentals of what you're going to be doing will change. And I thought about that, and I really sat with that for a while. And I when thinking about that, kind of began to challenge myself and say, like, I'm doing myself a disservice by not thinking bigger about what I could be going after. And that's actually one of the things that I'm trying to do is move into small to mid-sized apartment complexes. So get away from the 2 to 4 units. I still like the 2 to 4 unit space, but I definitely want to move into the larger apartment complex space when it comes to like future real estate investments.
you'll get there because you're already setting that vision.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
you're lining up the ducks and knocking them off one at a time. That's all. It just takes time. So when you
Absolutely.
get there, you'll look back in time, because it's the whole what is it, the book, The Gap in the Gain, right? Where you currently are, you always judge yourself. You look to the left, you look to the right. They did this, they did that. You can't do that. You can only look at yourself. Have I stepped forward?
Absolutely.
So I can see, or you can see, that you want to, in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, be miles ahead or on the next mountain. But what we fail to do is celebrate the moment when we look back and say, I've already traversed a valley.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I've covered this gap already, but because I'm standing where I'm standing right now, the gap isn't present with me.
Absolutely.
What's present with me is what I feel that I don't have, the gap.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
So you can't beat yourself up. And I refuse, like, I love to say, okay, this guy did this. He was really successful. He got that. He figured that out. This gal did this. She got that. She really figured that out. And I can't compare what pants that guy's wearing to what pants I'm wearing, because it's different.
Absolutely.
So all I can do is, did I take a step forward? Did I move forward? Did I close the gap? Did I increase the gain? And celebrate those small moments. It's okay. You don't all,
Absolutely.
like here on a Friday, believe it or not, but I actually do take some time off every now and then. And I think around 1 o'clock Friday, if I've hit my mark, I'm done. I'm done. And I won't come back to my computer until Monday morning, maybe Sunday night, to get myself lined up. But I
Sure.
have to give myself breathing space, right? I have to have balance. And the older you get, the more balance you need. And I don't just mean one of them
Absolutely.
hurricanes, right? So yeah, everybody's got their different walk. Everyone's got their different level of comfort or pain that they can tolerate.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to jump back to the advice that you gave the other people to
Sure.
set the date, tell people about it, hold yourself accountable, which is great because it's a segue to the next question.
It's like
So,
we planned it.
well, the stories unfold. And that's one of the reasons I love doing the show, because I ask the same questions on every show, but every show is absolutely different because everyone has a different perspective. So the next series is, what's the best deal you ever closed, or best deal you ever did? I'll leave it open because sometimes the deal you don't do is the best deal you ever did. But what's the best deal you ever did? What type of property was it? How did you find it? And how did you finance it?
So this is a great question, and I actually had two that I was kind of going back and forth about. Um, the first one was in Milwaukee. It was a property. It was my second property I've ever purchased, and it's the only one I've ever sold. Um, it was it's called a Polish flat as the type of property that it is. It's a 2 unit, but back in the day they had duplex units that would effectively connect to each unit. So you could have like one property with like a big family that would effectively occupy both units. But it was a Polish flat. It was on the street was pretty good. I followed my parents' advice. I found another street with that was pretty good. This one was a pure investment though. This was not a house hack. So I did conventional financing for this one. I purchased it for about 60,000. Um, this one was an on the market deal. It was a MLS deal. Rents over there were pretty strong. And my strategy typically is I'm a buy and hold investor. I don't like to sell things. I prefer not to sell anything if I can. So this was going to be a pickup, fold it into the portfolio, get it stable, get some good renters in there, and then, just let it kind of do its thing. Um, and I had been driving past the property. I was getting ready to close on it, just getting a feel for the neighborhood and everything. And a week or two after I had closed, I was driving by it, and there was this really big commercial development that was like fenced off at the end of the street. So the street was a dead end, but it would like dead end and then turn off, and you could get onto another street. But at the end of this dead end, there was this really big commercial development happening. And I kept asking like the entire time, I was like, what is this? Like, what is this going to be? Like, I wonder what they're building here. And it ended up being a college preparatory high school. Like, it's called St. Augustine, a really nice college preparatory high school on a very big plot of land, really nice facility. And I was like, wow, that is absolutely perfect in terms of the type of neighbor you want moving in next to you. So long story short, with this particular deal, I had executed my strategy of purchasing it, stabilizing it, holding on to it. Everything was great. And unexpectedly, the school reached out to me because they had been having so much success with their uh, development and their growth demand for the school that they wanted to expand it to K-8. So they needed more land to actually build the K-8. And guess who was their neighbor? So basically, um, this was a great deal, and this isn't a common deal. So I want to stress the fact that this very much so wasn't just, oh, every single deal you do in this scenario is going to have this outcome or whatever. I would say why I think this was such a great deal for me was because um, it made me think about the surroundings in a much different way than I had been approaching it with my purchases up until that point. So, proximity to a school, proximity to a hospital, proximity to different types of things very much so should be in your consideration when you're evaluating a property. And I still to this day try and think about things and their relation to other types of developments, other types of, facilities that exist within the neighborhood. Not only for these types of opportunities, but also just because those are things your consumers, your customers, your tenants are going to care about. How close are they to the school? How close are they to grocery stores? How close are they to, other developments that could be expanding? So that was the one in Milwaukee. The second one was in Chicago, and it was sourced via my network. It was an off-market deal. So a business partner of mine, he he got the tip of this investor that was looking to offload a fair amount of properties in the Chicagoland area. He was liquidating a big portion of his portfolio, and in those types of situations, you do get decent sized pricing if you can buy multiple properties at the same time. The opportunity allowed us to get hard money to help with the acquisition, and it was a 4-unit property, but in very decent shape. It was livable. It was 3 out of the 4 units were occupied. The landlord wasn't really doing a great job in terms of maintaining the property. It was very much so, you know, kind of getting away from himself in terms of the state of it. But it was very solid bones, and you could see what it could be if you could get in there and give it the TLC that it needed to get it back to the state that it was in. So we went in, purchased it for 135,000. Ended up putting about 100 grand into it for the 4 units to get it where it needed to be. Kind of take care of all the deferred maintenance. You had to replace the roof. We had a few water heaters, furnaces we had to get out. Had to go in and honestly gut a few of the units all the way out just from kind of the state they were in. But where we could salvage, we did salvage, and we ended up coming out having a pretty solid ARV of 400,000 off of the 135. So it was a very, very good learning opportunity as well when it came to different types of ways to look about doing a renovation, and also thinking about the way to problem solve different types of things. Very much so came up in that project, which was always helpful. Whenever you can have truly crunch time, let's sit down and figure out this issue. We've got limited time and we've got to make a decision here. That's a very helpful exercise too, with just helping you develop as not only a decision maker but as an investor.
So I love this part of the show, talking about the deals. Here's where I kind of pull back the curtains a little bit. So you gave me 2 entrees to enjoy on my steak here. So I'm going to take them one at a time and then savor them,
Right.
enjoy them. And I'm going to ask a little bit about the recipe in here. So I'll do the
Sure.
Chicago 4-unit first. Off-market deal brought to you by a lead. You did hard money to do the acquisition. Purchase at 135K, 100K rehab, roof, furnace renovations. So you're 235 in. You had it reassessed at 400. You have equity in the deal at 165. So now I want to put some numbers to this, right?
Yep.
You purchased it, and then how long from when you purchased it to you finish the rehabs?
Okay, so oh my gosh, the purchase I mean, we could spend the entire podcast just talking about that purchase process. But we turned everything in, we turned everything and went through the refinance process in 9 months.
Okay. So you answered one of the next questions. So 9 months from closing date, rehab to refi.
Correct.
So was it covered by hard money until you did the refi?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So the hard money was a 12-month term. It was so originally it was 85 for acquisition, 100% for construction. But then that was another thing. They changed our financing terms on us. Like, was it 24 hours before we were supposed to close? We went from 85 to 100% construction to it's like 75, 100% construction the day before we were supposed to close. So, those types of scenarios were, constant throughout the actual closing process, which very much so can be discouraging, stressful event but you know, you can figure it out. And I think like the big thing is always just taking a step back and asking yourself, okay, how can we figure this out? How can we get there? But it was hard money through until the refinance. And then that 9 months later, we're still in the same lending terms that we had when we refinanced.
So the night before, 24 hours before, they hit you with an additional 10 grand that you needed to come up with ish.
Basically, yeah. I think it was like a little bit more, but yeah, no, it was the night before. It was the night before. It was, you get the phone call of, hey, the night before we're supposed to be at closing. So they're just like, hey, we need another 10. And again, like, it's one of those things where you fight about it. You're like, you know, how did you not know that this was going to be extra money that we needed? And also, why are we hearing about this right now, the day before we're supposed to be closing?
Yeah.
And if it wasn't, you know, if it wasn't us, it would have been a situation of like, that might have killed it. That could have killed it for somebody. Like, especially if you don't have a lot of extra cash just sitting around. Like, that could have been something where someone could just say, like, I don't have any way to pay for this. I don't have anywhere to scrounge this around in 24 hours. But I mean, like, again, it was more of a headache than it was like this is a deal breaker type of deal. It was just, this is an inconvenience, but we're going to get it done type of situation.
Yeah. I mean, back to one of your first comments, walk the long path, right? So 9 months in and out, 100% financing, hard money for the rehab. That was a
Correct.
negotiation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did well to negotiate that with them. And then you refied, you put conventional on it. Did you take cash out on the refi? Did you leave the equity in?
Correct. Yeah. Took cash out on the refi. You know, after some of the headaches and everything, you know, you gotta have some type of positive, as well as you want to make sure you can square away any other debt that went on into the project.
Okay, so of the 165 in equity, how much did you take out?
Of the 165 in equity, 100.
Okay, so in 9 months, I love this part, right? So you cleared 11,000-ish a month equity on that deal that you put back in your pocket. You got paid $11,000 a month for 9 months to do that deal. That's
Say that one more time.
yeah,
our connection got kind of wonky.
yeah.
Say that one more time.
That's okay. It's the goats on the island here, right? They're chewing on the cables. Things happen. So what you put in your pocket after 9 months, like you do this whole deal, you finance it, the butcher, baker, candlestick maker, the plumber, the electrician, everybody gets paid. You stabilize the property, you refi, you've got 165K, you leave 65K equity in the deal, which I'm sure the lender liked, and you put 100K in your pocket. So for 9 months, at the end of that rainbow, you got paid $11,111.11 for 9 months. Every month you made 10 grand that you actually put back in your pocket on the 10th month when you refinanced.
Absolutely.
So why would you not do this? If I told you, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take $11,000, pay yourself $11,000 for 9 months. And if you do that, you can have a $400,000 asset that you will own that tenants will pay for.
I mean, it sounds crazy. Why? I mean, like, who would do that?
Yeah, it's like, where's the camera? Am I being
exactly?
What is this, right? So, okay, it gets better. I love this part of the show, right? So let's say that was out for a year. That's $133,000, which closely resonates to a doctor's salary. I don't think you want to tell this story at Thanksgiving.
And that's what I was going back to when I said real estate offers you options. I
Offers.
mean, there's not too many things, to your point, that you can do while also working your 9 to 5 job that can provide you with that type of opportunity.
So you were making this money. I won't say it was passive because you had all the headaches of managing the rehab. You worked for it, right? But what is that? 3,000 ish a week, 2,500 to 3,000 ish a week, above and beyond
More
your
or less.
job, right? Okay.
Right, right.
Oh, and you're stuck with this cash flowing property that's worth almost $500,000.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
And
then once you kind of do all the work associated with, stabilizing it, it you're not necessarily dealing with the same headaches that I think the previous landlord was with the deferred maintenance items.
yeah, and
Granted, I don't know how much he was doing to begin with, but in theory, if you do the work up front and you take care of those issues, you'll be able to operate it with, minimal headache. You'll just have to maintain things as opposed to like, be reactionary.
so we're looking at the pie of real estate, right? And we've done all your numbers, and in 9 months, you made 11,000 a month. Okay, so we're only looking at one slice of the pie. That what was your equity you were able to get out of that deal? We're not looking at the cash flow from month to month. We're not looking at the depreciation you're taking on your taxes. We're not looking at the margin that's going to happen over time as your rents go up and your mortgage stays the same.
Right.
We're not looking at any of those other slices of the pie. I'm just looking at the $133,000 a year that, if this went out for a year, that potentially could have made you. I mean,
Right.
we're only looking at that one piece of the pie, and they've got all those other wonderful events going on. And how many years ago did you buy this?
This was 20, was this 20? I think it was 22. This is 2022.
Okay. So in the past 2 years, well, 3 years, because this tax year, 2024, you'll take more
Right.
appreciation on that. You'll have more expenses that you can write off. You'll have more income that you could, like, the machine is going to keep running every day.
Absolutely.
It's not like you refinance 9 months and poof, that's it. You have a business that is still running as a 4-unit property.
Absolutely.
That did not go away.
Absolutely.
You have some lunch money.
Exactly. But the asset, it still pays for itself. It
Yes.
still it still it still pays for itself.
Yep. Your residents are, I mean, treat them like gold. Absolutely. So I'm going to jump back to the school purchase. Okay. The Polish flat duplex, 60K. Conventional lending. What do you have to put down on that one?
15,000.
Okay.
I think give or take, it was 15, or I think it was like 12, 15. I think it was 15,000. I think that was exactly what it was. That was all in though. I think that was with closing and everything.
So 25%. Okay. That
Yep.
real safe number to play with. How long did you own that one?
I owned that one. I owned that one about, I think it was like 2.5 years. I
Okay.
owned that one before the school approached me.
Okay, so you got over the hurdle of the high ranking capital gains. You were in the low end of the capital gains there. Uh, what type of rehabs did you have to do on that, and how'd you finance those?
It was very light. I did that out of pocket. So I bootstrapped the financing on that piece, but the renovation, actually, it was nice because it was a property that was owned by another investor. I think they were an out-of-state investor, and they just they didn't have the bandwidth to finish the project, so they were in the middle of it. Honestly, one of the units was completely done for the most part. So I just had minor finishes in that unit, and then I had minor finishes, or I had to finish the first floor unit. But it wasn't anything. It was not a large project. It was not a large project. I would say all in, with that, it was maybe another 20 grand to do everything needed, to get that one fully stable, rented on both units, and ready to go.
And that was out of pocket.
That was out of pocket.
Okay, so you're
And
35K into the deal. 80K was the whole nut for your mortgage and what you did. You were saying something. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and this was also when interest rates were nothing. And I remember my mortgage on this property was $350 a month. And it was $350 a month for everything. And my tenants upstairs were paying, I think they were paying like $1,100. So like that was one unit paying $1,100. So this property, and why I liked it so much, it was so strong on cash flow. Like both units fully rented were pulling in, I want to say it was pulling in close to 1,600, both units rented. My mortgage debt obligation was nothing, and the maintenance and deferred maintenance items were very minimal because I basically replaced anything that needed to be replaced once I took it on. Um, so I was happy just holding on to this property until the end of time. And this is kind of the school situation when like this, that would have been probably the only situation that would have occurred to me parting ways with this one.
So your mortgage, 36-ish,
Yeah.
3,600-ish.
Yeah.
Your rents were 19,200. 15,600 divided by 12. You're around $1,200 a month positive cash flow. If nothing
Yeah.
went wrong.
If right. And the likelihood of something going wrong was very low because all of the high cap X items got replaced when I took it over. So the furnaces, water heaters, um, water heaters. We did some what's it called? So we did some window repair work. We were doing new appliances, and again, like I said, this was in the process of being rehab. So I got to take on, like, they had basically all of the plumbing and everything in there already, which we went through and made sure was good. But we were effectively finishing it. We had, like, the big ticket items were already in there. This guy was more so just cutting his losses and moving on. And yeah, no, it was a pretty solid opportunity that we stumbled upon. And this wasn't an off-market deal. This was on the MLS. And actually, the interesting thing about it was I offered 60, and they countered me, and I said I can't do more than 60, and they said, okay, well, we're gonna go and take this other offer, and I said fine. And then they ended up coming back to me later saying like their other offer, backed out or whatever, and we ended up doing it at 60. So I was gonna say, like, we said at the beginning, like, be okay saying no sometimes, because in that same situation, if you have your number, if you have your, like, this is as much as I can pay for this, like, stick to it. Stick to, this is as much as I can pay for it, because you never know. They could always come back to you and say, will you still honor that? And then you could maybe even come down and say, well, actually, that seems a little high right now. We might need to go, a little bit cheaper than what I had originally offered.
I got to give props to my good friend Rich Merlino. He was on one of the shows, and he had struck this incredible deal for financing, seller financing, or something like that. And he just kept his composure. He kept cool. He was silent. And then he said, "Is that the best you can do?" Okay, so here we are. The school, 2.5 years, writes you a check. What did they buy the property for?
So they bought it for 150.
Oh Oh my God. Okay, here we go. So I ran some numbers in the background here. You were 1,200, 1,300 a month positive cash flow for 2.5 years was $39,000. Your all in was 35. So you've already made 4K on this deal. You paid off all your debt. You're holding a mortgage.
Right, right.
So that means with the mortgage, let's see, it would have been 45,000 for the mortgage plus the extra 4. You walked away with about 100K on this one.
And this was again a situation in which and while the deal of the school approaching, which again I want to stress that is not a common thing that I would say occurs
Yeah.
for any new investor. But why, like, aside from the 100K, like the opportunity to learn how to approach a new deal, how to approach how I should be looking at these things, where this property is located in relation to other things, what does the city have planned for this area, this neighborhood. That was probably more valuable because in the same sense, there's something I'm working on here in Chicago. The street that I live on, there's multiple properties that I own. And what's happening surrounding this street, there's a lot of city development happening. There's a lot of really cool stuff. And I would 100% say this strategy of building around this type of stuff. It's not, I didn't say I'm coming up with this strategy, but I'm saying I learned this from this last deal. And that definitely helped shape the way in which I approach and how I look for new opportunities. So I mean, like, this deal was great because yeah, it was cool. A school bought this property for me. This is also the only property I've ever sold. Um, like I said, I don't like to sell things. I want to hold on to things forever. The only property I've ever sold, I sold it to a school. I didn't sell it to a family looking to buy it and move in. But it was just a really, really solid learning opportunity for me, and that's why I hold this one in high esteem as well.
So I tightened up the numbers. You only made 94,000.
Oh, okay. Well, can't say 100 then.
Okay, so you held that for 30 months. That gave you over $3,000 a month. $3,133.33 a month.
Yeah.
Why would you not do this? That's a really good question. Why would you not? Fear? I don't
I
know.
think it's
We could do a whole
fear.
show on
Fear.
the
You
why
nailed
not,
it.
right?
You
So,
nailed it. You nailed it though. Fear.
fear goes both ways. You can have fear of failure and fear of success.
Oh, that's a great quote right there.
So, you know, all those deals we could have done and didn't do because we thought we were not worthy of that deal. Well, slap myself and call me silly. All right. That was really super good. And, these were incredible numbers. The $1,000 a month, the $3,000 a month. And these were not huge out of the realm investments for a real estate investor to pull down. I mean,
Singles and doubles.
yeah, a 4-family and a duplex. The duplex made you 3,100 a month.
Singles and doubles.
I mean,
And I'm gonna be kicking myself in the foot here because I might be adding to the competition, but at the same time, that deal in Milwaukee, that 60,000 one, you can still get properties that are duplexes in Milwaukee for sub 100,000. I just bought one. The Friday we were at the REI summit, I closed on a duplex. Like the Friday I got there, I was in the hotel, the convention center, sitting in the lobby with a mobile notary closing on one of the properties. I'm renovating it right now. You can still do this in Milwaukee. It's very much so an attainable market for the listeners that are looking to get started. If you're out of state, if you're in state, that is a great market. If you're looking to do cash flow investment, buy and hold, Burr is still completely attainable in that market.
Well, you lived in the two areas where you invest.
That's very true. I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because, even at the summit, people were asking me, well, where do you invest? And I would answer that with a question, where do you invest? And
Right.
the reason I would answer that with the question, it's because what's the best market for you to invest in? The market that you know the best.
Absolutely.
So I may hear you say Milwaukee, jump on a plane ticket, go out there, and I don't know Milwaukee from.
Exactly.
So whereas that market, it's a great market for you. I can hear on a podcast ABC or XYZ or 123 and focus all my energy there. And John Bombachi said it best. He said, at a poker table, there's always one guy who's the patsy. And if you don't know who it is,
It's you.
So, yeah, I mean, and to that point, these markets. That's why they're working for you. It's like, I know my market like the back of my hand. I'm not in that market, but I can invest where it makes sense and I can live
Absolutely.
where I want to live.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely.
So we're only 3 hours into the show here, so I'm going to keep it rolling. Are you having fun?
This is great. This is great. I'm having a great time. I'm hoping you're having equally as good of a time as I am.
I'm loving it because you're giving me gold here, and I'm going to give it right back to you that you can use for all your marketing and social campaigns. So you should easily have a
There we
year's
go.
stuff for you here. So next question I have for you is, what is the biggest hurdle you've had to overcome as an investor, and how did you solve it?
I alluded to this at the beginning with the advice piece of what I would tell myself, and that's thinking big. And I mean, like that might sound a little corny or something when I think of hurdles, but the thinking big piece definitely, looking back at deals that I looked at and I like basically disqualified myself from them because they were larger. I kind of kick myself now because they're definitely deals I could have done at that point in time. And I think how I, solved it was surrounding myself with people like yourself and other investors that are doing bigger and better deals that I have not done yet. I think when you surround yourself with people that you are effectively able to aspire to be or aspire to grow to, that in of itself will allow you to elevate to that particular level and to think about things in a attainable way. I think, you know, the biggest hindrance that you usually have when it comes to accomplishing something is getting your mind in the same like plane of thought track as kind of your desire. You want to make sure your mind is with you to help you problem solve. And I think like Robert Kiyosaki, he's got a great quote in Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I keep going back to that, but I really, really like that book because it does change a lot of ways in which you think and problem solve. And it was, a rich parent will tell their kid, or will remove the word can't from their children's vocabulary. So as opposed to them saying I can't do this or I can't do that, they'll change it to how can I?
Yeah.
And I think that mentality, that simple change in vocabulary does so much to your mind and its ability to problem solve. And that's something I try and challenge myself to do. But I also, like when I talk to people about getting started in real estate and they start saying can't, or like, I don't know, I don't know if I can do this because I can't get financing, or I can't find a deal, or I can't, do insert issue here. I do challenge them and I say, is this a matter of can't, or is this a matter of like you're not problem solving? Because there's a solution to all of these things that you're saying you cannot do right now. And I think some of it, in the sense of like, even if it's like, oh, I can't get the amount of money that I need from a lender to finance it, you talked about it already. go to a lender, have a conversation, say, this is what I'm trying to do. And they will tell you what we need
Yeah.
or what they need to get you to that place. But that's a matter of you being willing to go and have the conversation. So I would just say, like, my biggest thing, in terms of hurdles was thinking bigger and allowing myself to think bigger, and also allowing myself to be okay with okay, we're doing a bigger thing right now. I don't know all of the answers just yet of how we're going to get this one across the table, but we're going to get it across the table. We just got to figure it out. Like, just allowing yourself that, like, space to figure it out. That's a hurdle right there. That's a hurdle. I don't think I'm unique in that hurdle either.
I mean, sometimes it takes even more effort than that to figure out what's for dinner. You know, the negotiation that has to happen there can, like, sink the Titanic. What was it? Oh yeah, Titanic for sale, $1 million. A set in location, minor rip and hull, something like that. Fake ass. Yeah, mindset. And like, how, okay, it's one thing for you and I knowing that it's mindset, and knowing we have to be able to flip that switch and get into state. Like, I'm in the state of solving this problem.
Right.
But how do you explain the flavor of chocolate ice cream to someone? How can you explain to someone that you need to have mindset? I mean, it's a nice word to hear.
Right.
I mean, how can you bridge that gap?
I would say this. We talked about this a little bit too, of how do you eat an elephant? It comes down to mindset. To me, comes down to your ability to perceive something in an attainable way, like, I can solve this problem. And I think part of everybody's issues in certain situations of why they shy away or why they don't do something is the daunting task of what that, like, perceived problem is. So I would say to, describe chocolate to, would you say chocolate to an ice cream truck, or
Yeah.
chocolate to the ice cream man?
How do you explain the flavor of chocolate ice cream to somebody, right? Oh, it tastes like chocolate.
Sure. Sure. Exactly. I would say, have you ever tried X? Do you know what that tastes like? I would pick it apart in a different way. Because, yeah, describing chocolate to somebody, that is a difficult task, especially if, you don't really know what somebody has tried to, like, provide them with a point of reference. I think, in the same vein as somebody that's saying, I have no idea how to do something. Okay, well, have you ever done this before? You have? Great. This aspect of that is similar to this. Like, what did you think of, like, just digging deeper into the said question in a way that is more attainable for the audience? Because I think everybody can relate to something, or everybody can relate to a thing if it's put into terms that they would understand it. So, I mean, just the delve deeper is super important when it comes to helping someone understand the mindset. It's what exactly do you need to hear in order to get you to at least take that first step? Like, take that first, okay, I can take this baby step, and this is familiar enough to me, and also putting me in the right direction to obtaining this new goal that I haven't done before. Like, that's kind of how I would liken it.
I think you nailed it when you said point of reference. Because here we are on a show talking to people. How did you get started? What did you used to do before? Blah, 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 blah. Everybody has a different story on how they went from, I've never done this before, to I cleared 3,133, over $3,000 a month, because I came from, I don't know how to do this, to I figured it out and got there. And
Absolutely.
I mean, what's the fastest, easiest way to change mindset? You pick up a book, you start on page 1, you turn to page 2, you turn to page 3. I mean, everybody on the show mentions Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that's got to be one of the easiest books to read to change mindset, right? So how do you change your mindset? Well, first you have to have mindset. Well, how do I change mindset if I don't understand mindset? You have to get a point of reference. So
Exactly.
I'll put this out there for free for the universe until I'm long gone and my grandchildren are watching it. Fine, great. I want it to be free out there. I want to help people get from point A to point B or point Z.
Absolutely.
And your
Absolutely.
story is helping all that. So, yeah, describing chocolate ice cream. Good one.
That's a good
So,
one. That's a good one.
so we've talked about a few different books, and now we're going to actually dig into that part of it. So you mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm going to just throw it out there. Was there a book in your investing career that had the greatest amount of impact on you?
I mean, okay, Rich Dad Poor Dad, definitely, because that is what truly shifted my brain from solely equity markets over to tangible assets such as real estate. I mean, that book was very, very impactful, to just helping me get started. And this question is, I love this question. I hate this question because it's so difficult to pick a book, because especially when there's so many great books out there, but B, um, it's hard when you're trying to like quantify them, and because each of them can be so great for different reasons and teach you different things. Rich Dad Poor Dad, I have to give it that one because I feel like without that book, there would not have been me doing some of this stuff. Like, without this one, I would say another really impactful one, and this is going to be one I would say less heard. I actually told this to Brandon Turner when we were at the REI Summit. But one of the first, like, I would say, truly straight real estate books that I read that had a huge impact on me was his 7 Years to Seven Figures book. And that book, like I said, I told him about it when I met him at the summit. I was saying, hey, really appreciate all of the great advice, all of the great content that you've been providing for years at this point. But I really wanted to thank him for that book, and he was kind of taken aback because he was like, I haven't thought about that book in such a long time. But he was like, that's so awesome that you read that. And yeah, it was one of those things where it's a very simple book. It's not long at all, but for someone getting like started, which that's why I picked it up. I was getting started. That book gives you a very solid strategy of how you can get started in real estate. It can give you a very solid 1, 2, 3 strategy of your first, your second, your third, and so on and so forth. And that is a very helpful tool with somebody that is truly, more or less feeling around in the dark for things when they're trying to get started.
So I'm going to push the boundary here. I usually ask for 2 book recommendations. On the first question, you need me to. So I'm going to ask, is there a third book you might recommend that had an impact on you?
Um, the one thing, by Gary Keller. That was a great book, and I think that I kept maybe I should have put that one in the first slot because I alluded to the fact of simplifying a larger goal into something smaller and smaller and smaller until it becomes very, very, very simple and very attainable in terms of like what you need to accomplish. I kept alluding to that this entire podcast, and that book does a great job of talking about that concept. Yeah, that is a great book.
With my
That is
Donald
a great book.
sticker on it from a banana I ate. Yeah, Jay Papasan, Gary Keller, really, really, really good book. And this is such an interesting book because when Gary Keller was interviewing Jay Papasan for the job, Gary Keller was saying, well, I like this book and I like this book and I like this book. And Jay Papasan was there like, well, I wrote that and I wrote that. Wrote that. So they kind of hit it off right away. And yeah, This came up the other day and knocking the dominoes down. I was talking with someone on my team or some investor and just knocking the dominoes down one at a time. One thing, really, really simple book, just focusing on those one primary thing that you need to do. Like the advice that you gave the newbie starting out, right? You have to figure out all these different components. Okay, so for the funding, what's the one thing I need to figure out for the funding? Okay.
Absolutely.
That's figured out. What's the one thing after that until eventually you're knocking down the domino stack all the way to the moon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great recommendations there. So we're getting to the end of the show here, and I want to thank you. This has been a wild ride, and I always enjoy these. So what's next for you in real estate, and why not get started today?
I feel like I keep stealing my own thunder with referencing things earlier in the show. Moving into these mid-sized apartment complexes is next for me and real estate. The why not start today? I've started. I'm currently in conversations with a couple of individuals within my network that have a few that they're looking to offload. So I'm talking to them, trying to see if we can make a deal there. There's two that I'm currently evaluating that they're trying to offload, as well as, I'm not trying to put all my eggs in that particular basket if that doesn't end up working out. So me and my VA have been hitting the phones pretty hard, trying to reach out to some off-market homeowners that might be looking to sell. So we've been hitting it pretty hard. We've got a couple of follow-ups actually. Today's the 28th. We had a couple of pretty warm ones that we sourced. We have a follow-up discussion, and I think it's Saturday. We're going to be talking with a few of them on these opportunities. But yeah, no, I'm the why not? It's just I wish I would have started sooner. That's that's the why not here. But we're actively pursuing these right now.
So for your negotiations, I've got a couple of gifts for you. Two books.
Oh wow, here we
Right
go.
off the bat here. Getting to Yes. I don't know if you have that book on your shelf, but Getting to Yes. That's a short book.
Yes.
These are negotiation books. And I think for the market that's coming, because people are going to find themselves in trouble commercially, they're going to be wanting to unload deals.
Agreed.
And being able to negotiate that deal. So Getting to Yes, and then Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, FBI hostage negotiator. And
I like that.
very counterintuitive. I'm really, really enjoying that book. So where does the title of the book come? Splitting the Difference, right? You have 4 hostages. Say, okay, well, let's split the difference. I'll take 2 hostages and you get. Yeah, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. So you have to negotiate a win-win situation, right? For him,
Absolutely.
it's life-death situation. Like, I'm looking at a portfolio of 30 units right now. And the advice that there's a good friend of mine, I'm not going to get into the whole story, but he wants to unload 30 units. And I'm giving him advice that is not helping me at all. Because now he wants to sell the property. I says, well, have you thought about positioning the properties to get the highest price? This is, well, I had an audit done and he thought it was 7.5. His number came in at 4.2. I says, well, this isn't going to help me much, but you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this to get closer to your 7.2. I'd still like to buy your property. And what I'm telling you is counterintuitive because it doesn't help me at all.
Absolutely.
However, I'm telling him the truth. I've known him over a decade and we have a trust relationship. So maybe he'll sell me the deal. Maybe he won't. And I've already told him, it's like, look, if we can work it out and it works for you, I'll buy your properties. But if it doesn't work out, that's okay, because I'm going to buy somebody else's properties. I'd like them to be yours, but if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. Yeah, so those 2 books, you can take those with you. Definitely.
I wrote them down. I'm definitely going to check them out.
Yeah, get on Amazon, have them ordered. And if you could get a couple chapters under your belt before you start to negotiate with these guys, you may have some pretty successful results. And if not this deal, what you learn there, you can take into the next negotiation.
Absolutely.
I love answering problems and solving stuff. So the last question I have for you, actually, there's one after that. This one is not on the list, and I always throw this on as a curveball because
Okay.
I get some of the best information by asking this question. What's the question on this show I didn't ask you that I should have?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. If you were to start over in real estate tomorrow, what would you do?
Okay, if you were to start over in real estate tomorrow, what would you do?
Um, if I was to start over in real estate tomorrow, I would be looking at I would be looking at commercial properties right now and looking to get very strong deals off of them because right now, from a market perspective, the market is that's not the favorite asset class when it comes to current lenders. So there's, to your point earlier, definitely opportunities there to source and acquire very strong properties at discounts right now. I would be, and I would also be very much so. I think there's something to be said about not being afraid to partner with people. I think there's something, especially a new person starting out. There's a lot of opportunities to learn when you just do a deal. There's a lot of opportunities to learn and gain experience, and that, apart from the, you know, money that is generated from the opportunity, that's the stuff that, it's the adage, if you give a guy a fish, he'll eat for a night. You teach him how to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. The exposure to the deal is something that'll teach you how to fish. So I would say if I was to start tomorrow, I would be looking at primarily looking at commercial properties. I'd be like very targeted with that buy box of commercial properties. Um, I would look for mom and pop buyers of commercial properties, or mom and pop owners of commercial properties. I would probably even have like my targeted criteria if I was looking at properties that have, list pending, or pending foreclosure, or more senior owners or something to that effect. But I'd be targeting those individuals and asking them if they have any interest in selling, as well as I would be looking to potentially partner with somebody that's already in that space so I could better learn it, but also do something bigger too. I think there's something to be said about the opportunity of pooling resources and allowing you to do larger opportunities as well.
I'm so glad you asked that question. No, that was gold. That's probably going to be on the teaser reel for this episode. I mean, because that's that thing. Like I had one guest on there, and he started talking about his sons and how real estate has given him the opportunity to be there and present for his family. And he broke down into tears, unexpected, but that question just gets so much response. You never know where it's going to go. So I always love asking.
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness, Mr. Ransone. Here we are, Joshua. We're at the end of the show. I cannot thank you enough. You brought so much. You're absolutely focused. You're laser focused on where you're going. You know what you're doing. You've got your bases covered. Your realtor, your broker, your deal flow, property management, landlord, your vision for buy and hold. You still carry a W-2 to keep yourself loanable. You got your vision. You know where you're going. You're going bigger. I'm going to be so excited to see where you end up from here. And it could be 3 months, 6 months. I see great things going. So if our podcast peeps should want to reach out to you, Chicago, Milwaukee, or just really liked what you've been able to bring to the table here, how should they reach out and get in touch with you today, Josh?
So I am on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. If you want to Instagram me, go to I'm Keeping It Real Estate. So at I'm Keeping It Real Estate. My Twitter, or I guess it's X now. My X handle is at Josh Keeping It RE. Um, as well as, like I said, I live in Chicago. I also travel to Milwaukee a fair amount too. I go to meetups in both cities still. So I mean, I try to go to local meetups as frequently as I can, at least like a couple times a quarter. Um, in addition to that, you can check out my website, ransonrealestate.com. But yeah, please feel free to reach out. Love talking about real estate and any value that I can, bring, any way I can help anybody. I love to do that too. I got it through, blogs like this, podcasts, books, free information because we live in the age of internet. So I like to give up the free information as well because that's what helped me get started and keep it going.
You brought it today. I cannot thank you enough, Josh. This has been wonderful. I loved it. I mean, I always get something out of one of these shows. So thank you so much for offering up your time to be here as my guest today. And ladies and gentlemen, as we close another show, this is Brian Lucier from the Why Not Real Estate Podcast signing off, and we'll see you on the next one.